Hello, my name is Tom Hogan. Welcome to the October 2021 Iowa Chapter and Cedar Rapids Rail Fan Slideshow. I'm here with Keith Graber today. He's going to be making our presentation with a slideshow of Western Iowa. Keith, you want to say hi for everybody?
Good afternoon, everyone.
And now we are going to talk just very briefly about a current event in the rail fan community. This is we're recording this a few days before this is actually showing, but we do realize that the Iowa Interstate steam engine is going to run this weekend. So if anyone has a chance to be out there, they're burning off the rest of the coal that they have in anticipation of mothballing the engine, I believe. So if anyone has a chance to go out to the Newton area Friday or Saturday, I believe that's when they're going to be running. So with that having been said, Keith, why don't you give us a little overview of what we're going to see today?
Okay, so I grew up in Western Iowa and grew up in the Wall Lake area, and this is a map from the Northwestern's 1936 system map, and I went to high school at Wall Lake, and really that's everyone kind of has their line, and my line is the Ida Grove line, which basically ran from Maple River Junction off the double main up to Ida Grove. So that's where this action will be from. And I really didn't get interested. I got interested in trains early. At the age of 8, got my first model train. But until I really got to drive in that, I really didn't think of the trains as the trains that I was seeing go through Wall Lake and that. So really in the mid 70s, I really started paying attention. So what we're going to see today is some slides from Francis McCabe from Carroll, who I got to know as a friend, and some of my own that are more recent. So we're going to kind of talk about the history. It said branch lines, but basically we're really going to focus on the Maple River to Ida Grove line.
So just as a question, the map you have here shows it going all the way through to Ottawa, but it was already abandoned west of Ida Grove?
So by the time I got interested, the line had been trimmed back to Ida Grove by the mid-70s. The line you see from Carnarvon going to the right or to the east was the line going to Tama, and that was abandoned in 1972, going that way. The line you see from Sackton going up to your top of your screen up to Lakeview, Sac City, that was abandoned in 1979-1980 time period, and the other line going from Wall Lake down to Mondamon and to Deloitte, that was abandoned in the 60s, I believe. Through there. So at one time, when it was in its heyday, you could basically go 6 different directions from Wall Lake.
Wow. All right.
So our first slide, this is from Francis McCabe, who was a doctor in Carroll, and I got to know him just through rail fanning. Here we see in the Carroll yard, we see the train on the main line with the main line plow. And we're just west of the existing CNNW depot in Carroll as it sits today, with the Highway 71 overpass in the background. And there's a little bit closer up shot of the train, and you can see this was in the 1970s that this was taken. You can see the caboose in the back, bay window, which the Northwestern ran exclusively in this area and most of on its system.
The crossovers are between the two main lines, is that correct?
I believe so. At that point, you can just see it down there a little bit to the west. I think you can see the crossover switch. At that time, that's where it was in the mid-70s.
Okay.
And you can see some of the abutments from the Great Western. If you look all the way down to the west, you can see there's still a Great Western abutment that came in on the west side of town. And there you've got a better sign of the crossovers in the main line right there. And right now he's crossing onto just a siding track to get the caboose and get off the main line for this guy who is coming eastbound and obviously we're very familiar with the S 40-2s, 6800 and 6900s that the Northwestern ran. That was their main horsepower in the 70s and early 80s.
Yeah, you can actually see there's a maintenance way truck down there on the westbound main, and the depot is in the shot.
Right.
Off to the left as well.
Yep. So you can see that, this is a shot obviously looking east toward the depot. A lot of those structures are gone. That grain elevator that's to your right, there was a rolling mill that was down there also that is now gone. Here we are in downtown Carroll, and this is obviously here we got a GP50, the 5065. With probably a Falcon train with a pig train.
I mean, it looks like it could be a set of Jeep 50s.
Yep.
Potentially.
And that's again, I believe why the GP50s were ordered were basically for the Falcon service.
Yeah, they were higher speed, geared differently.
Okay. Here we have a shot. So right to the west of the depot was the turntable at Carroll. And here we've got an SD9, which basically was their workhorse on a lot of the branches, not only on out of Carroll, but I know on the Sioux Rapids branch, and there were many that were out of Eagle Grove also. So here we have the 6611, which is probably the unit I saw the majority of my time from the early 70s, mid 70s, and late 70s that worked out of Carroll with a snowplow on the turntable.
Is this one that it was a boxcar converted to a snowplow?
I do not know that answer.
Okay.
Okay, here's another picture of that turntable, and there was a lumberyard that sat to the north, and of course, these days Walmart is there. Where that it was, that's where Walmart was built, the first Walmart at Carroll. As we think about back by the depot, it's now a pizza ranch, and Walmart has relocated to the western part of Carroll on Highway 30 now. But Walmart basically is where that lumberyards and the roundhouse sat. So
the lumberyard took over the roundhouse at one point.
Right. So as what we're looking at basically is the original roundhouse, and the lumberyard basically used that for storage. And this picture is probably in the late to early 70s. Okay, here we are again on the main line. At the Carroll Depot. We can see the train order signal, and there was one for in each direction at that point. The elevators you can see that are gone to the right. There's a rolling mill. You can just see the top of the rolling mill as it peeks out above the depot there. And again, tracks probably, I'm thinking this is early 70s. We haven't gotten the 4R Act yet.
Right. It does kind of give you an idea of the scale of just how massive that Carroll Depot is, which it's pretty big structure. Mm-hmm. If you ever get out that way to see it, it is nicely restored now.
Mm-hmm. So in the Carroll yard, I believe there was three tracks to the south at that point. And here you can see one of the sidings there. And here we have the 6611 with a string of 40-foot C&W boxes, okay, ready to go to one of the branches. And we can see this is probably, my guess is, as looking at the track, we can probably see in 1974 the 4R Act came, and so this is probably, we're talking mid 70s, probably after some of that rehab has already started on the main line.
Yeah, it's still jointed rail, but there's definitely new rock down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, and occasionally they took the 6611 in for service, and it was changed out either with the 6610 or the 6613. Here we've got the 6613 with a pretty freshly painted weight car at the Carroll Depot, and you can still see the train signal is still up at that point. Okay. And this is a shot that Frank got. This is at Maple River Junction. So we're looking south. The double main is in those trees behind it, and the town of Maple River is what we're looking at. And then as the branch line skirted off the double main, it went over a little creek, and this is the bridge. And if you go to Maple River today, the Sauk Rail Trail, that bridge is still intact today. So here we've got the 4547. It's a GP9 headed toward Breda. Okay, there's a pretty good grade that goes out of Breda up to Maple River. In its heyday, they had, with the passenger trains, they had them clocking through at 70 mile an hour on this line. It's almost unbelievable that's what they had. But at one time, they flew down through this area, and here we've got the local making its way up to Breda, and this is all now a bike trail.
5 cars and a caboose and a Jeep 9.
Yep.
Yeah. That's just classic Western Iowa branch line right there.
Yep. And there's our train again going over one of the wooden trestles that aligned was on the line. So they arrived at Breda, okay, and this is the Breda Depot before it was rehabbed. Later in the show, I'll show you a picture of it after it was rehabbed. But at this point, here it's arriving at the depot, and the depot was actually used for hatching chickens, and we'll see that here in one of the slides here. So here we've got the train. It's ready to cut off the box cars, and obviously we can see. So obviously we're after the Rock Island merger, the Northwestern took over some of the cars that were still in good shape, and so here we've got 2 of the cars that were painted in the blue, and there's still one of the old Rock Island in the red. That's on this train.
Yeah, the Rock Island shutdown you're talking about.
Right, the Rock Island
this would have been during the directed service period.
Possibly, yeah.
But you can see they're stenciled for CNW there on the sides.
Yeah, so we're probably talking, I'm thinking 82, 83 that these pictures were taken. So again, as I mentioned before, so the depot was used to actually hatch chickens, okay? So the Built Hatchery in Breda used this building to actually, and there were chickens in there. So when the town rehabbed the depot, there was quite a bit of interior cleaning that had to go on in this depot, and I never thought it would ever even. I was lucky it lasted. As you can see, it had a slate roof on it, and they did replace that slate roof. They haven't done much in the interior, but they did replace the slate roof on this, and you can see from the track work again. The CNW did do a little bit of track work in the early 80s. This line was the first, the Ida Grove line, just to talk about that for a minute, was the first branch line to have the financial assistance from the state in 1974. It didn't get a lot of money, just a couple $100,000 for ties and some rock. So it basically just patched the line up so it wouldn't be abandoned. But again, in the early 80s, the Northwestern came back through and did some more work under contract with the state because they did not keep up the line like they should. So the state kind of forced them to do some work on the line in the early 80s.
Right, and then this was eventually part of what was transferred over to the Jack Haley operation with the CCP, and it's still operated. Not this part, but part of it is still operated even today.
Right. So this part is a bike trail. Then we'll see that in slides in the later portion of the show. And so here we've got the locomotive spotting some fertilizer cars at the Rita fertilizer plant. At this point, the telephone lines were still into the Wall Lake Depot, as you can see. So it went from, the telephones were still intact at that point in the early 80s. still going from Carroll to Wall Lake. Here we've got they're spotting the cars at Breda. So a lot of BN hoppers we had on that line for fertilizer, potash, urea. Okay, Frisco car, of course, they were at that point.
That merger had already happened.
Yep. And here the Jeep's gotten back on its train. So basically, in the 70s, the Northwestern didn't ever really run 4 axles, but I don't know what the philosophy was, but somehow it changed, and where you never. Basically, I ever saw a Jeep on the line. You always saw the SDs, as I said, the 10, the 11, and the 13. Now, starting in that early 80 period, 82 and on, till it ended with Northwestern service, it was mostly Jeeps.
I wonder if that had to do with the CNW retiring those SD9s.
So
at that point,
yeah, they went. Those SD9s went to the DM&E, and the 6611 still lives today at one of the elevators in South Dakota, which is interesting. But they always said they didn't want on the smaller rail. They didn't want to use the 4 axles. So this is most of the line is 90-pound rail from Maple River to Ivy Grove. The Harlan line was obviously the Great Western line, and that was 112-pound rail. And then the Holstein line that ran from Sackton all the way up to Holstein was 72-pound. So you had a variety of rail poundages, but they liked the SD9s on that line exclusively in the 70s, and then whatever philosophy changed in the 80s. Okay, so here's a shot as it's approaching. It's just past Carnarvon, okay, and now it's going under the Illinois Central's Omaha to Chicago line, okay, and we're headed north here, and you can still see the telephone poles are still intact. And so we're this bridge. I always took it for granted, and never knew exactly how cool it was. But it was. They did not interchange here. It was always. There was never an interchange between the CNNW and the IC at this point. Here's a big, more up close picture, and this is a bike trail today from that point to Maple River Junction. Here we are with the train arriving at Wall Lake at the depot. We can see the train order boards have been removed, unfortunately, and the depot has been painted gray at this point and has a new roof on it. And the train is still has its 3 boxcars and its caboose. And in this picture, we can also see that the Northwestern's station sign is still there. The old Wall Lake that's still there. Unfortunately, I don't know where that went. I wish I had it. So the train again has the 3 boxcars, and the boxcars are will be going to Crackerjack. So
now with the pickup here parked by the depot, is there still an agent working the depot at this time?
So in 1980, the fall of 1982, the agency was terminated at Wall Lake. At its time when I helped the depot agent, I helped bill out a few grain trains in the 70s. The station agent had Breda, Sackton, Wall Lake, Oldebolt, Arthur, and Ivy Grove on the Maple River line, and then he also serviced Lakeview, Sac City, Early, Shaler, Galva, and Holstein on the Holstein line. So he had 11 stations that he serviced up through 1982, and then they moved the agency to Carroll at that time, and then they were starting to eliminate agents at that point, and we were going to computers. But yes, the section crew worked out of the depot until its closure in 1985, when the Northwestern officially abandoned the line.
Right.
Okay, another picture of it. On the far left, on the hill you can't quite see it, but there'll be a better picture of it. The Andy Williams house is that's where Andy Williams' birthplace is, on the hill. Here we see the wigwag, the signal wigwag, which was kind of interesting because it was actually, if you look at it, it's as you're approaching it from the north, it's on your left hand side, so it's kind of like on the wrong side. I'm not quite sure what the history was, and there was only ever one signal there, and it looks pretty tired in this picture.
It does. It does.
And here we are, and then to the left, like I said, just above the Ford sign is the Andy Williams house, and that's obviously one of the reasons why the Historical Society was formed was with the Andy Williams history
In Wall Lake.
in Wall Lake. Mm-hmm. So here, there's a last picture of the train headed to Oldebolt, and with an old elevator on the left-hand side, which has now been removed. Okay. Here's a different day where we've got the 4289. This is a GP7 with a grain train.
Did they run a 25-car grain service out here?
So in most of the time, by the we had reverting back into the 70s. So at that point, there was. Ida Grove was the big shipper, and at that time it was a 75-car loadout. Then that was the main customer on the line at Ida Grove, was the 75-car loadout there. The other elevators, Arthur did put in a 25 during the Northwestern days. They had a 25, and then there was fertilizer companies at each of the towns, and then the popcorn plants also.
Right. This would have been right about the time when the railroads started marketing that as a 25-car, or multiples of 25 as the service.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And if for those people that followed in the mid 70s to 77, 78, the Northwestern had a mini train service, which they called. So they had basically, they may have as many as 4 or 5 elevators that put together a 25-car train. So it was basically, again, marketing it to get a unit train, but it was more of a gathering. And so on the Ida Grove line, there were 2 elevators at Oldebolt, and then either Arthur or Ida Grove filled up the 25-car train. So that was done, I believe, in 77, 78, and I've got some records of that happening on the lines. That was the mini train. I think it was about 2 years they used that concept. Here we are just west of Wall Lake, and the engine and the lone caboose is going to go get a grain train. Here we are at the crossing west of Wall Lake, and this actually had a bridge. It was actually a bridge at one time that went over the rails, and they eliminated the wooden bridge and just put it at grade crossing. So it's as approaching the Booyer River, okay, the old girder bridge, which has been replaced now. See, obviously, water's pretty high this year.
I'm guessing this is a 1983 photo.
I would say at least it's at least a 83 or 84 from the picture. We got one dated.
The next class hasn't come out to paint over it yet.
That's right. So kind of good shots of the Jeep and the caboose. And it must have been a pretty wet spring, obviously.
There's a lot of water in the ditch down there,
yeah.
and you can see standing water in the fields too.
So I'm thinking this is probably the spring of '84. Obviously, is what I'm guessing this picture is. A lot of water here, and
yeah.
Again, if you could, this obviously you'll drive by this line today with the CN. It's much better condition today, obviously.
I think the county needs to come out and clean out the culverts.
Something. Here the train is arriving at Oldebolt, okay, and the Casey's is close to there. So, and here we are in downtown Oldebolt, okay, and it's on the main line. You can see the tracks they did not rehab at this point. They had not gotten to this point. They never did. The Northwestern did at this point. They the line was at 10 mile an hour at this point. The whole line was, even with the upgraded sections. And here we are passing by the Cracker Jack plant at Oldebolt. So at one time, popcorn was a huge commodity on the Ida Grove and the Holstein lines. There were nine popcorn plants that were on this line. There was Snappy Popcorn at Breda, Meyer Popcorn at Carnarvon, National Oats, who shipped a lot of, obviously at Wall Lake. Since I went to school, I saw that exclusively. They did 50-foot box cars of bagged popcorn, and they shipped it to Cedar Rapids. Color Corn was at Wall Lake. Cracker Jack at Oldebolt, and we saw those 3 box cars. They shipped in bulk, okay, and those went to Chicago, to the Cracker Jack plant there. At Lakeview, there was Quinn Popcorn and Little Chief. In Sac City, there was Noble Popcorn, and in Shaler, there was Jolly Time Popcorn. So some pretty big names of popcorn were on these 2 lines. And we can see in this picture, we can see the popcorn. Unfortunately, that has been torn down now. The Oldebolt elevator in the back, and some of the dark green Northwestern classic cars at that time.
Those had to have been just about brand new at this point. But those are really, really sharp looking cars.
Okay, and so the train crew has gathered their cars, and it's coming back east now, and they're going over the Boyer River bridge.
Yeah, and you're seeing more of the after effect of that Rock Island shutdown too. They've actually incorporated those Rock Island cars as system hoppers now in the trains.
Here we are coming into Wall Lake on the curve. About where the caboose is about where in the CC&P they put in a welded rail starting about the caboose all the way through Wall Lake. It was 85-pound rail, and it was not in very good shape. So there's a strip of welded rail coming into Wall Lake, and then through Wall Lake to the first switch. That's all welded rail at this time. There are more welded rail sections now. They just this year they added 2 more from the Arthur ethanol plant going toward Oldebolt. There's 2 more miles of welded rail they put in this year. And here we are going through Wall Lake. You can see the track is not in great shape at this point.
Oh, I assume that was high-speed super elevation going through the curve.
It probably was, but
I mean, we can run passenger trains through here at 90 miles an hour, folks.
Yeah. So from the main line, and you can see the one track that's off on the left. There were 2 other tracks that were in between here at one time. Obviously, with 13 passenger trains at one time, plus the freight trains, and going in 6 directions, this was a busy place.
Right. They would have had to have the ability to make set-outs and pickups and meet trains in front of the depot.
And there was a track in back of the depot that went all the way through also. So there were 5 actually tracks that went through the crossing. Here we are going by the depot. And here we are going under the Illinois Central's bridge again. So you can see how the tracks are in pretty tough shape. Here we're at Carnarvon, so one of the few pictures I have of a train going through Carnarvon. And this is at the Meyer going by the Meyer popcorn plant. And if we look down, you can see that one of the Rock Island cars are stenciled Northwestern there, which is kind of cool. If you go down the tracks about halfway on the right corner of your picture by the tracks, you'll see a bunch of trees there. So that's where the line would have split off to Lake City, okay, and over to Tama at that time.
And you can see that overhead, that really short overhead with the IC bit in the background as well.
Okay, all right. So here we are with another day at Ida Grove. Okay, so today we've got the 4469, which is a GP7, and that's actually off the Omaha Road. Okay, next to Omaha engine, and the 4421, which is a GP15. Okay.
And we're out here retrieving another grain train today.
Yep, and we're out retrieving the. Doc McCabe came out to Ida Grove to see must have caught and found out the train's out here. So here we are in beautiful downtown Ida Grove, switching. Okay, and it was quite an operation. So when they had a 75 car train, the tracks were, they had to put the train together. It took them a long time to get the train together because there was many switching points here. They actually loaded out of a couple elevators, and right now the engines are going back to retrieve a couple cars from that silo elevator that you'll see in the background, that white.
Yeah, it looks like there's 3 separate grain legs up here that they've got.
So it was quite a chore at this point to load 75 cars at this location. So here we're gonna back into 2 of those cars that they loaded. Okay, on that one, and they've got another large string. You can see the Ida Grove sign, Northwestern sign is there in the background.
So the long string of C&W hoppers, are those sitting actually on the main line now?
Yep, those are on the main line, ready to go. They've done some switching there. They're going to pull them out now. Okay, and that was the loadout of that facility. That is now gone. They've eliminated that. Okay, and so now we've come back around, and now we're on the main line. We see where the caboose is dropped off off on the north side, and we're going to go pick up the rest of the train. Okay, so it's backing onto the train. If we look off to the left, we can see the line that they were on, the siding they were on before, and then we see a track that's going into a building. So that was the Gromako trolley company that had a trolley that was in that building. Okay, and I don't know the total story, but they would run on the track, and I'm not sure if they had permission or not. They obviously had a switch into it. So, but especially when the CNNW was either embargoed or abandoned, and I rode on the train once rode on a trolley from Arthur to Ida Grove one summer when they did that. But anyway, so that the building is still there, track is still in, the switch is out, but that's and Gromako Trolley still makes trolleys today and refurbishes them at Ida Grove, and we'll see a picture of that facility later. And here they're on the train, so they're backing onto the rest of the train. They've got the caboose is sitting off on the siding, so they'll pull the train out and they'll get the caboose on there.
Yeah.
Okay, another shot with the caboose sitting on the siding, and
I'm just thinking about pulling 75 loads out with a Jeep 9 and a Jeep 15.
So sometimes they have 50, but a lot of times they were 75, so it was slow going.
I'm sure.
Here we have another better picture of the trolley barn. And here we are. Finally, they're making it out. So obviously, slow and steady wins the race. So here they're at the golf course at the wooden trestle, which is still there today. Another picture with Ida Grove Water Tower in the back. And to your right, as they're going over the blacktop, the hospital's on the left, and Gromako Trolley is that tan building that is on the right. With the water tower below the water tower. Here we are at Highway 59 at the junction of 59 and 175, and obviously they're headed toward Wall Lake or Carroll. Okay, with the train again, a lot of Rock Island hoppers.
Yep, all system hoppers.
Yep. That's basically a lot of it. You either saw agri-industry cars or you saw system cars. You saw very little else on this line. And
Doc stringlined them.
Yep. So Doc happened to be on the right day or the wrong day, whatever. And the track again, we saw how it was wet that spring, and so track basically gave way on the side and dumped a couple of hoppers. And he just happened to be there at that time, and we're west of Arthur at this time, and the Arthur elevator you can see in the background.
Yeah, looks like they managed to. They have some onlookers.
Yeah,
checking out their progress.
And again, the train was not traveling very far, so obviously, I'm sure they only dumped 2 cars, so it wasn't too bad of a derailment. So they unhooked their cars and away they went. And now this road that we're seeing off to the right, that leads to the ethanol plant that is now built to the south of the elevator, which we saw in the background.
Okay.
Okay. So we're going to jump to Carroll. Okay, and we're by the Carroll Depot, and we can see a business train, looks like, that's headed to the east. Okay, and you see some agri-industry grain hoppers there. Again, that was served the line.
So, just as an operational question about those grain trains, the Jeeps, did they come off when they got to Carroll? Did they run road power out from Boone and meet them there and run them east with that?
I can't answer that question because
Okay.
if that normally there was just a single Jeep that they did, but when they took the grain trade, somehow they snagged a second one. And in the 70s, I do have a picture of an SD 40-2 that was at Addy Grove. That was there. So again. I'm not quite sure how they got the grain trains to the east, but I'm sure they yarded it and then probably got the bigger power on it.
Well, you notice those hoppers over there; those are agri-industry
Yep.
hoppers, like you were talking about. So that could very well be what that is, waiting for some road power to show up.
Yeah, and those were we'll talk more about. And I am a branch line guy, so I'm a grain car guy. In the 70s, there were lots of new hoppers that came online, and these agri-industry cars were spanking brand new when they went to Addy Grove. Several times I saw them. And here's another special downtown Carroll. We can see
This time the 403 is the leader.
Yeah, the 403. That's right.
Those were really some good-looking F units that they ran around with their business train.
And I'm not quite sure what this special was. Or because if it was a detour, not sure they'd have the F's on there. So I'm not quite sure what this guy was.
Well, those are not long distance Amtrak passenger cars back. Those are turboliner cars in the back.
Right.
This is not what you would have expected for a consist, like to see a California Zephyr that's rerouted over the C&W.
So I'm not sure if this could have been a farm rail special that would have ran at this day or not.
Right.
Fortunately, I don't have a date on this, but maybe just supposing that could be a farm rail special that they ran at that time. And here we are in West Carroll, okay, and here we see the lash up we'd see of those SD 40-2s, the 68 and 6900s with some auto racks. In the background, you can see the Great Western cement concrete piers that would have came from Omaha, came up to Harlan through Manning, and then made a swoop over the Northwestern, and then downtown to Carroll, and then up to Fort Dodge.
Right.
Okay, here's another picture by Carroll. Again, a newer power. We've cleaned the yard tracks out now. They're pretty much, pretty much gone, and you can see that the track's in much better condition at this point.
It looks like a eastbound bird. It's got a C&W leader, but
yep, you can see they're starting. You can see they haven't done anything with the depot yet.
Right, they haven't started rehabbing the depot, but the main line looks a lot nicer.
Yep.
Welded rail, new rock, new ties.
Yep. And here's another with could be a salad shooter type train that they had. And here they're going to start rehabbing. It's got the preliminary fence up, just kind of the construction fence that they used. You can see the Walmart sign in the far right there.
Yeah,
Walmart has now come to
give
town.
you a reference for where that roundhouse stood when it was. Yep.
And here we are.
We got at least 2 yard tracks still in place.
Yeah, at that point. they'd stubbed them at that point. They didn't go over the crossing. To Tom's point, now we're starting to see some of the rehab work on the depot. A new roof. Obviously, we're going to start on top. See the foundation is good, then go to the roof.
Yeah.
It would have cost over $400,000 to move this building. So somehow they got it negotiated with the Northwestern, and they were able to just put a fence in and keep it in place. Otherwise, I think it was $440,000 to move that building. Here we are further down the line at Denison and the Denison Curve. So Dana, who might be watching, obviously a familiar place to him, and which I kind of like this shot. And obviously we've got a lot of empty coal train that's headed
Looks
back.
like maybe a ferry move for a Jeep as well, hanging out there in the back. But yes, the final generation of C&W road power right here.
Yep. Okay. And now we've got the depot has been refurbed. We've got new signing, new fence, okay, and we have the signal bridge.
Yes.
Okay, that is now in place. All right. So I got these shots from the CCNP. So they did a high rail trip, and I'm thinking this is probably to venture back for a minute. So in 1986, Jack Haley, as Tom was talking earlier, purchased the line from Carnarvon, basically, and now they call Ida or Ida Grove Junction, to that point where where the bridge was, okay, up to Ida Grove. And so in 86, they put the connection in, and we'll see the connection here in a little bit. And then they did a lot of work on this line. So I'm thinking this was probably spring of '88 when they finally got the line all refurbed. So this is at Arthur. So here we've got the 25 car loadout that was at Arthur at this point. Main line looks pretty good. Here we are through Oldebolts, and one of the pictures showed it. The tie's pretty much in the dirt at this point. Oldebolt became a 50 car loadout at this point, and then later on became a 100 car loadout. And here we are at Wall Lake with the high rail truck again. The signal still looks pretty sad. Still the wigwag was still there yet in the mid 80s. Okay, and the sign you can see has been changed to North Wall Lake at this point. The depot again is not being used at all.
And it's got the green diamond CCP emblem on it.
Yep. Okay, so here we're coming up to the interchange. So, and then in the fall, 1986 was a really wet summer, fall, and so they struggled to get this in. So here we're coming up to the main line. We can see the overhead bridge is still in, so the actual Northwestern track went down. So this farmer sold a piece of his land so they could put this interchange in, and the CCNP did have a easement to actually put a Y in, but they never did put the west leg in. It just goes up to the main line to the east.
Right.
So here we are approaching the switch, and there's the bridge in the background, and it's got the CCNP diamond. It says Ida Grove Junction on it. Okay. Here we are today. So the trains always had to slow down, or they would either cut the cars off and take the power up, and then make the switch, and then go back down and get the cars, or they had to have somebody else do the switch, and then they just make a run up the hill. So the CN and IC put these signaling in at Ida, and they changed it from Ida Grove Junction just to Ida at this point. And here we are looking west at that interchange at this point.
Yeah. So just to add on to that, there must have been a pretty significant grade to build this connection that the cars are sitting on to get from the C&W, which was down lower, to the IC at grade up higher, that they had to build up a pretty steep connection track through there.
Right. So a couple times the crew would drive. I would get the brakeman at Wall Lake, let's say where the depot was, and it's about 2 or 3 miles out here. I would take him up to the gravel road here. We would walk down, and he would throw the switch, and so then the train wouldn't have to stop. They could just keep going. And at that time, the CCNB had a caboose, and he would just get on the back, and away we'd go. So several times I would ferry the conductor up to the switch, and then the train wouldn't have to stop. Otherwise, before they had to use the Sanders. It was quite a adventure to get up this hill, and they would use the Sanders. I've got a couple pictures of the Sanders working, and it would just be at a crawl, and they would jump out at some time, and if they had enough power, and make that switch quick, and then they would go east. And here right now in that picture there was some DDG cars that were that's where it was, and the train was going actually to the ethanol plant. So here we are. There are only three customers on the line. So there is here at Wall Lake is one of the customers, and this is Cookie's barbecue sauce that is at Wall Lake. And here we see one of the cars with tomato sauce in, okay, with the CN spotting it at the and then in the siding.
A wide nose SD60 there.
Yeah. Okay. So what they do is they have a special ramp that they put right up to the cars, and here we have a rail box that came in this day, and they load the totes of tomato sauce, and in the next picture we'll see what those look like. Okay, and there's the totes, okay, that they get out of there. So they get in the full totes, and then these actually do some collapsing. And when they get enough 3 loads, they'll send an empty load, a load of these totes back to Washington in a boxcar. So they actually have in and outbound traffic with Cookie's barbecue sauce, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So the second one, which is a small picture I know, is the ethanol plant at Arthur. Okay, so this little guy here is the main reason why the line is still in place. So it ships 80 cars of DDG or 80 cars of ethanol at a time out of this plant, and it's usually at least one a week of each.
So are you making fun of it because it's a little guy, a little picture?
little picture, but a big player on the line.
Right.
So anyway, here we are at Ida Grove, and so Ida Grove has 2 switchers, obviously, that they use, and they're obviously, you can see the vintage of them, but they're both kind of unique, and they do both, and they're still in use today to switch the co-op at Ida Grove.
Yeah, a couple of SWs, it looks like. SW12.
Yep, and they've been there for many years.
Yeah.
So here's another picture of one of the grain trains, the worm trains being loaded, one of the BN grain trains that are being loaded. And the tracks they have just this last year, they retied it, anything that needed rail in, they just rehabbed the yard. So these guys get 100-car trains at Oldable. Mostly there are many soybean trains, but they have this recent year they have shipped some corn trains out of here also.
I think we're going to have to talk to you about zoom factors for your photos for the next show.
Okay. All right. Okay. So those are a couple old pictures that I took. So here we are in the middle of in the winter, obviously, with some CN power here, and with the obviously Grobeco and its Goverson in its castles in the back that we have. Mm-hmm. So they park the power out east of town. Okay. And here are 3 CN units.
Yeah. Not afraid to run big power down that line anymore.
Not anymore. Not on that 90-pound rail that they were concerned. Here we're going to run it. And here's some BNSF units, same location. And here's the BNSF worm train that was just taken last year on the line, and is approaching Arthur. Okay. And we talked a little bit, we saw the Breda Depot where it was kind of a hatchery for chickens, okay? And here is the Sauk Rail Trail and the Breda Depot. Basically, the outside was taken care of and done some work, but the interior, nothing has ever been done. And, of course, that is the Sauk Rail Trail that goes from Swan Lake in Carroll all the way to Blackhawk Lake at Lakeview. And that's a Rock Island train owner signal that is on that picture. here we are at Sackton. So, and I probably should have spent a little bit more time on the map at the beginning, but Sackton was where the Y was that went up to the Holstein line. So this is just west of Wall Lake, or excuse me, east of Wall Lake, between Wall Lake and Carnarvon, and the pits that were there, the gravel pits were there. So this scale house was in use many years, probably in the 50s. It was built, and very modern at this time. I remember the scale was there, and they did weigh sand cars still in the 70s when I was there. Here's another picture of that. Was where the scale was, obviously. And Wall Lake is in the background, and then just where the trees are is where the line wide off to Lakeview, Sac City, and went up to Holstein and Sioux City. Okay, and here we're looking. It's still at Sackton here, as it looks today, and we're looking toward the Junction. Okay, there were 4 ladder tracks that were in here at one time. I remember in the 70s, and they were loaded with 40-foot boxcars that served the line. And that was in the
this is at the sand pit again.
This is again at the Hallett's pits at Sackton or by Lakeview. And okay, so here we are. These are some pictures from the CNNW archives. This is at Sackton. Okay, their water tower at Sackton. Coaling Tower. Okay. And on the line, at the end of the line, is at Ida Grove. This is the Ida Grove depot, and it's been moved out into the state park there. This is the depot at Lakeview. It is going to be torn down, and it was part of the junkyard, and it had steel all the way around it, and they took the steel off, which exposed the outside of the. And I'd never seen this before. Okay, and so this depot was moved from its location to this place and was used for storage on a junkyard, but it is unfortunately it's too far gone to go. Here we are at Sac City, and this is a very nice depot. The Historical Society of Sac City has now taken this over, and it's right across from the world's largest popcorn ball, if you've been in Sac City. But a very nice depot. I mean, Wall Lake obviously had a lot more trains and had the wood depot, but Sac City had a nice depot, and it is depot. Yeah, it's very nice. Okay, and to the east, this is the division point. Okay, Lake City was the division point, and they had a 2-story building. Okay, and so for whatever reason, they wanted to move the division point to Wall Lake. Never got moved, but it ended up being at Lake City. I'm not quite sure why the reasoning was that it was out there in the middle of basically nowhere, because it was just on the Tama line from Carnarvon to. But this was where the division point was. And there's a shot in its heyday. Yeah. And it's a residential home currently. You can see it if you go by the Lake City Water Tower. It's just right by the Lake City Water Tower if you want to see the residence right now. Another shot of it.
View of it.
Yep. Okay.
Train order signal out there too.
Right. Yep. It also had with its coaling facility. Okay. It also had a roundhouse. Okay. Was at Lake City. Another water tower. Again, those were from the CNW archives. Here we've got a picture of Wall Lake and Basil Cobb from July of '62. So a lot of neat things in this picture. Obviously, you can see the train order signal, which again, fortunately, Northwestern took that down before we got the depot rehabbed. And you can see there's the Railroad Express Agency, and in the background there's a couple baggage cars. One was for the welder that was out. His name was Henry Beetlema, and he worked out of Eagle Grove, and sometimes he brought his car here. We think the far car is probably maybe a section gang that was at that time.
Yeah, like one of the traveling sections.
Yep. At that time. So we're thinking this is 1962. Okay. Little later than that, here's another picture of the depot. The Andy Williams house is on the top right-hand corner, and that has been restored. Again, this is 1972. Picture by Ralph Voss. Okay, and a picture of the 6611 that's just right outside the depot with some cars. And there was that post right there was one of the listening posts. So if they'd have an engine in Wall Lake, then that that listing was at Carroll, and they would be able to see if the engine turned off or not. And on those 6611, obviously those were SD9s. 6601 to 6614 were the 9s, and the 6615 to the 6621, those were SD7s, and they were pretty much a workhouse. So on the depot, so there's a couple pictures of the Wall Lake Depot. You can see in this picture, you got the Chicago Central and Pacific on the signal box. Still the diamond with the North Wall Lake there, and the depot has been refurbed at this time, has air conditioning and heat. Fence has been put up. Again, in the early 2000s, a couple friends secured a caboose from Winterset and moved it up here. The scraper is an original scraper off the line that they found. They actually made the line, and there you see the wigwag, which looks a lot better now. It's been refurbed, and it actually works. So, and yes, the green isn't right for the caboose, and someday we'll get that corrected.
Yes.
And here's the final shot of it, the Ida Grove line. And again, this is kind of an artsy fartsy one with its lights on and our baggage cart that's on the outside. So again, it has been restored inside. It has a lot of neat history items in from the railroad. The east side is used as the town's museum. And at any time, if you want to see it, you can contact the Historical Society, and they will be glad to show it to you.
Yeah. Now, we're going to do a little bit about some of these hoppers that we were talking about. Now, what's interesting to me about it, so this was a service that the railroads, the C&W, the Milwaukee, they all did this to some different degree, right?
So
in the 70s.
So, yeah. So, we're transitioning from the 40-foot boxcars to the covered hoppers, and covered hoppers were pretty hard to get a hold of. So these elevators would actually lease them, okay? And I'm not sure quite what the term is, if they were 5-year leases or whatever, because obviously they went back to the leasing companies after their leases. As we see them today, they're running all over the place. But the elevators painted them, and so that they would know, obviously, whose cars they were. And so I think, and I'm pretty sure that Ralston and Jefferson were probably one of the first ones, and they painted them pink. And they weren't the only ones, obviously.
Very distinctive.
But they painted them pink so that they would stand out from the other covered hoppers that were in the yards. Mm-hmm. So here is one from Ida Grove, actually, that they went through Wall Lake, and the Crawford Elevator Company that had a branch at Storm Lake also had their own covered hoppers that were on the branch. The only picture I've ever seen of that one. Here's Creston. They had pink.
Looks like there's a
International,
an Alice,
or it's either an Alice or a Uni system.
Yeah,
I'm not
it's
quite
not
sure.
international.
You know. Okay, and this is Fort Dodge and Sheldon. Goldfield up by Fort Dodge had their own cars. They were white. Clemmy, of course, one of the big elevators. Farnhamville, Clemmy, West Central. Those were all the big hitters at that time. A lot of them were pink hoppers. Northwood by Mason City, they were red. Then West Central, when they went with Scranton, they changed their name from Ralston Jefferson Co-op to West Central Co-op, and they laid them at pink. These are a later version. West Bend had pink cars. Superior, a large elevator on the Rock Island, which has a large ethanol plant today, serves it. Theirs were orange. This is Woodward's. They were orange also. Not a great picture, but Woodward had their own. And then Yetter, which was right down the line from Carnarvon on the IC's line, they had their own hoppers, and they were gray. And Clare at Fort Dodge had their hoppers. They were white. Cleghorn, again, they had theirs white up by Cherokee. And then I'm a model railroader too, so many of these hoppers have been put in by Intermountain or Athern, and this one's actually at Ashford. And this is our last slide of my show. I have 31 model railroad cars of Iowa hoppers. So there are many. It's kind of fun to collect all these and see where they're all from in the state of Iowa.
Well, and you talk about this, the hopper service and the services that the railroads came up with. What's interesting about that is even all the way through 2007, 2008, the IC&E, the DM&E, they were going out west of Mason City, and they would take 100 cars and spot 4 different elevators, 25 cars at a time. The crew would tie up in Spencer, and then they'd work their way back east and pick up 4 different elevators and have a 100-car train back into Mason City to go down to Kansas City or Chicago or wherever. So this service model that these hopper cars kind of inspired, it still exists. It's still going on even today.
Yep. And unfortunately, the Northwestern kind of went away from that, and they wanted just one elevator to load at a time, and they went away from the mini train and the gathering like they did, unfortunately. And unfortunately, it doomed some of the branch lines, and some of them, like the Holstein line, would never be able to load the 80,000 ton cars on their line.
The amount of money that would have taken to rehab a line like that.
So anyway, it's kind of fun. I'm a branch line guy, so I enjoy collecting the Iowa hoppers and showing the slides that Francis McCabe. I appreciate Dana helping me get these slides and sharing them with you today.
Well, thank you, Keith. Obviously, this is a huge part of railroad history in the state of Iowa. I appreciate you sharing this with us and some amazing shots of what used to go on and how things were operated out there. So thank you very much, and we'll see everyone next month.
Have a great day. Thanks for watching.